Okay, so thank you everyone. Thank you for coming. I see there is a little bit of a smaller audience today. I assume the summer is hitting. So today we have two speakers, Julia Biffy, which is currently an application specialist in Siemens Digital Industry Software. And also we got John or Johnny Kutzlotsky, if I'm saying it right. And he is also a patent agent at Cooley LLP. So also like before we go forward, I want to advertise that like in regard to the career programs and constructing your own career, the American Physical Societies are some important resources that you should check out. The links for those resources are here at the bottom, and these basically are tools that would allow you to kind of form your career and find like a path that better fits you. And most importantly, like I would advise you to check the mentoring program, which connects you with like a scientist that left science and went into industry and can kind of guide you the same process that they went through in a way. So this said, I think there is no point in wasting time, and I like to give the word to Julia to introduce herself and talk to us about what she does. And if you have a presentation, I'll let you share the screen. Otherwise, you're free to talk for us as much as you want.
Thanks.
And
So I had started preparing a presentation, then it just didn't feel right. I don't know. It felt a bit too strict for maybe the purpose of the of this setting. So yeah. So maybe a few words to introduce myself. Good morning. I am Julia Biffy. I am based in the Netherlands, though it doesn't look so from this beautiful painting at the back in the background. And yes, as Francesco said, I'm application specialist in Siemens, and specifically I work with Siemens Center Cooley. You've probably understood less than half of what I just said, but I hope that by the end of this session, it will be kind of clearer where I come from, what I do, and how I got here. So I'm going to try and share with you maybe my story, touching upon the points that I wish someone had discussed with me when I started my scientific journey, to understand what would an academic career look like and what other options I would have. So, well, I started my studies at the chemistry department in Bologna, Italy. Went to France for master thesis. Then I completed my PhD at the Italian Institute of Technology. And then I moved to Spain, where I met our magnificent host, Dr. Belli, for my postdoc. So I started from having background in chemistry. I started with simulations of small molecules, electronic structures with, multi-configuration or multi-reference methods. Then I moved to an experimental group during my PhD, where I was the only theoretician, had to work on the research topics like perovskites and photonic structures. And eventually I studied luminescent proteins. So the fil rouge that connects these topics is the interest for light-matter interactions, which I studied mainly with the quantum mechanical methods and developing analytical models. So I was and I am deeply in love with the topics of my studies, and I really thoroughly enjoyed the challenges that I was faced with. But this was until I met my partner, who I love more maybe than this, and who is also a scientist. And then I realized that the main challenges I was actually dealing with were converging to the same country to live together, and the empty bank accounts that were preventing us from seeing each other very often. So this might sound very pessimistic, but I think it's only fair to be realistic and tell you how hard it can be to have a stable life when you pursue an academic career. And this normally entails moving a lot, changing city or even country frequently according to where the next position opens, where you get your grant from. And in the best case scenario, you can win a grant that secures your positions for some years, for example, 5 or 10 years in your early 30s. And then you have to hope that your position is tenured and you get hired. Otherwise, the dance of the grants writing starts again. And this is incredibly exciting. I really enjoyed it myself in the first years. And some people enjoy doing it for the rest of their lives also. But you also have to understand that securing an academic position means primarily becoming a professor, which is a job that requires having not only scientific knowledge, but also management knowledge, good interpersonal capabilities. And at some point, you really need to be good also communicating and writing and winning grants. So when we finished our PhDs. My partner and I were ready to really conduct a long-distance relationship for an indefinite and unpredictable number of years. And while I was waiting for the results of some grants, it may take a while sometimes, with only 6 months left in my postdoc contract, I unconvincedly started scrolling through LinkedIn job posts until I found some interesting ones that were based in the Netherlands, where my partner already was with his job. And so I applied to all sorts of jobs that seemed vaguely related to computational chemistry simulations and coding. And ça va sans dire that there were tons of positions for developers and software engineers, and very few molecular simulations, which is in industry is a relatively new field. So, and the first thing I would like to point out here is maybe that a lot of job descriptions are incredibly misleading. Some others had impossible requirements. Others had too many requirements. Others looked like they had been written specifically for me. But then the outcomes of these interactions were very, I would say, sometimes random. So, for example, I got interviewed by a company that builds quantum computers, and the job posting was very badly written, and I hadn't actually understood what the position was about. So only during the interview, it became clear that I was really not the profile they needed. So, and in other cases instead, companies that in principle were looking for a profile like mine put me through some maybe ridiculous automatic tests like games of questionnaires, and then decided to discard me on the basis of how I had conducted these games that maybe had nothing to do with either my technical knowledge or my personality. So the first interactions may be very unpersonal and very strange. However, it is important to apply to a lot of jobs, and even to jobs that don't necessarily look like what we're looking for, because before you find something that fits what you want to do, and that actually ends up into an interview. So my interaction with Siemens instead went through a process of 4 interviews. First one to assess my sanity, my personality and willingness to relocate to the Netherlands, which was a main requirement, I would say. A second one with management to get to know each other and explain something about my background. And third one with the team, where I was asked really technical questions and to solve problems on the spot. And then a final one, again, with management to discuss how such interviews had gone and what would be the next steps in case this would lead to a hiring. And then, ever since I joined Siemens, I also had the opportunity to conduct a few interviews to fill a few open positions in our team. And having recently been then on both sides of the process, I think on this, I would like to give you a few pointers. And I would start with saying that if you find a job offer that you're very interested in, apply for it, even if you don't meet all the requirements, because you don't know why those requirements have been placed there. For example, the number of years of experience, the knowledge of a language or of a coding language. Sometimes it's for real necessities, like, oh, you're applying for a developer position and you have to know how to code in C. And sometimes it's maybe those requirements have been put there by someone in management who has an idea of what the ideal candidate would look like, then in the end wouldn't be so strict with those requirements. So as long as you say that you're willing to learn those skills that maybe you are missing and you're actually putting the effort into learning those, it may be that even if you don't check all the boxes, you will be the candidate selected for the job. Maybe on this, it's important also to say that if the requirement concerns relocating and you're not willing to do so, it may be worth asking why relocating is necessary, because there may be a possibility for compromise in 2025. So then what else can I say? When you find a job description, I think you should immediately check the company and possibly the managers and the people who work in the team. Seeing other people's background can help you understand what is expected of you, what kind of language you should use. are these people, do these people have the same background as me, so I can use a very technical language and I would be expected to use a very technical language? Or is the background of the team very diverse? So maybe I shouldn't be too technical and instead try to deliver my points without, while being comprehensible to a broad audience. And this will also guide you in deciding how to structure your cover letter and your CV. Come prepared to interviews. You may be asked technical questions. And so if so, you need to make sure that you're in conditions to think about your answers. And if you don't know something, or if you don't know the answer, it's okay to say so. So just be aware of the fact that if you're coming from a STEM degree, there are chances that you go to an interview and you're asked to solve problems on the spot. And then maybe the last thing concerns writing CVs and cover letters. I mean, in the CV, you need to concisely make people understand what your background is, what your skills are, and which precise fields you have used such skills. It is maybe customary to divide your CV in sections, like your education, your experience, and your skills. And in the experience section, you can list the topics that you have worked on. And it is useful sometimes to write a short sentence that helps the reader understand what you've done. For example, if you've done an internship in the University of Lyon in 2015, you write internship in University of Lyon 2015. I developed an analytical excitonic model for luminescent molecular crystal, something like this. So this helps the reader really understand what you have actually done during this internship. And the skills section is also maybe very important because here the interviewer will look for what you can actually do. It is very important that you comment every skill you have. For example, if you've used software like Gaussian, you can write Gaussian in your software skills, but maybe also add that you have performed geometry optimizations and excited state calculations of a certain class of compounds. Be specific and honest because it will be appreciated and it will also prevent difficult situations and misunderstanding with the interviewer. Again, I just would like to say that there is no wrong or right way of writing your CV and your cover letter, but the style and the way you write them convey not only the content, but also an idea of who you are as a person, a little bit of personality. So try to take care about how you show yourself. Often also CVs and cover letters are screened automatically, so make sure that you use the keywords that are present on job advertisements. And remember that in the interviews, you're not just being evaluated, but you're also evaluating if you would like to perform a certain job with the people who are interviewing you. I mean, just to give you an example, I refused the professorship position in university because I didn't really like the environment I found when I went for the interview. So it's also important to think a little bit about yourself in this process. So this to say that I was hired for a job for which I didn't really have all the necessary qualifications, I would say, and but for which I saw immediately that there was a fit. So in 2021, Siemens bought a startup called Cooley, whose main aim was to offer a user-friendly multi-scale computational chemistry tool while still providing some freedom to expert users, for example, by having icons and buttons, but also scripting interfaces. And so the main expertise of the group I joined was in core screening methods and a little bit in molecular dynamics. And I realized two things when I joined. First, that I was the only expert in quantum mechanical methods, so lots of responsibility all of a sudden. But this also told me that this was some expertise that they were missing and they thought could add some value to their team, having someone like me who knew how to move in the field. But I also realized that it was going to be extremely difficult to understand my own job. I would have to start from scratch, all the theory underlying the methods in the area of core screening. But at the same time, when you are hired, it means that the team desperately needs you to immediately start working on projects. So you don't really have the time to thoroughly study everything with your own times. And because of that, some concepts maybe are not yet so clear in my mind as I would like them to be. but I really needed to start working immediately. And that's how I found myself studying all water interfaces for cake recipes, chocolate melting points, to change maybe the formulations of these of food to make them healthier while maintaining the taste they have, or simulating ions in polyelectrolytes, all sorts of problems that are very diverse in topic, say in content, but they have in common the fact that they deal with real life problems that other companies need to address quickly and with minimum expenses. So they don't want to wait for results from long experiments. Also, often companies don't have research facilities, and so computational resources, computational simulations can really help them at least narrow down the number of experiments that they need to request to other companies or to universities to advance their own products. So I think I'm running out of time. So maybe let's take a bit more a look into what I actually do. So the main part of my job consists in R&D, namely I find a problem that needs to be solved. Example, calculating interfacial tension, or a property that is useful to derive other quantities. Example, enthalpy of mixing. And I try to see if I can find a solution using molecular simulations or molecular properties. For every new problem is like a small PhD. I have my literature search to perform. I see what's available in the software, try to develop scripts to calculate the specific properties I'm interested in, validate against literature use. And everything I do, however, is done with the customer in mind. So here maybe is the main shift from academia. In my academic research, I was very focused on really understanding all the details of what I was doing, sometimes finding a new path and to explore. And there's really no time for doing that. When you're working in a company, you have to have the customer in mind at all the times. Before doing anything, we have to ask ourselves, is this useful for them? Are we solving their problem? Will it be easier for them to run the script once I develop it? Can they do it without my supervision? Can this be beneficial to other industries? And planning this in advance is very useful to both get approval by management for whatever project you have in mind, and to develop your own scripts in a very general and therefore reusable manner, so preventing you from having to adjust your product later on. So, okay, Siemens is a big company. I'm a very small group, very niche expertise. So at the very beginning when I joined, we really, I was not just doing R&D, but I had to also tackle things like customer support, marketing, communication. Everything needed to be handled by me and my colleague. We spent a lot of time training customers, so teaching them how to use software, what computational chemistry is, computational physics is, and helping them relate the property they were interested in, like on the macroscopic scale, for example. Again, the cake, a cake formulation with a molecular scale property. Okay, you want to replace some compounds in your cake, but you want it to be as spongy as the original recipe. How does this relate from a molecular to the molecular from the molecular perspective? So part of my job there is to find to understand that sponginess relates with air bubbles formed inside the dough during baking, and therefore studying surface tension could be a good way to get at least a qualitative idea of this characteristic. So there is also this part of connecting the world your customers live in with your knowledge. Again, as I said, a lot of time was spent in sales and marketing, which is, and it really took us a couple of years to get a few people up to speed to what computational chemistry is and what the software can do. But this paid back, because right now we actually have people who know more or less what it means to perform simulations, and therefore can do the customer-facing job, which some people find very exciting. I personally don't. I prefer to instead work in the research part on my own. And therefore, this has allowed me to also have a bit more balance between open research topics, normally collaborating with universities or participating in European projects, and having an application-based research approach to research that is needed to help manufacturing industries like speed up and improve their research work. I think I'm out of time and I'd rather take questions.
Yes, you are being very exhaustive, I have to say. And I encourage everyone in the audience, there's a question, including you, John, if you want to ask anything. And I have for now 2 questions for you to start. So first of all, I see that like your job is still very scientifically oriented. And then like how much freedom do you have in the kind of work that you perform and in the initiative that you wish to pursue it, and how much of it depends from like, I'd say higher up economic constraints or like management, like visions and stuff?
Yes, that's a very good question in the sense that so most of my research is dictated by customers. So if there are, it comes and goes in waves. When there are a lot of customers to take care of, for example, 3 customers buy the software at the same time, they all need to be trained. They all have problems at the beginning, learning what computational chemistry is. And those first 6 months in which I'm taking care of them, I basically cannot do anything else but take care of their problems. Once they're a bit more independent, then I normally have more time to dedicate to research. Higher management plays a role, but normally in a big company like Siemens, upper management comes into the picture when things go bad. For example, oh, this year we lost 3 clients. How did this happen? And then that's when they come and try to give you more of a, they come with their vision and try to tell you, okay, maybe you should change how you manage your time, or maybe we should allocate more resources to help you manage all the requests that you have. So this is when management comes in the picture, is normally either things are going so well that they actually want to be part of it, or things are going not so well and then some reorganization needs to take place.
Yeah. And then the second question that I have would be like, what are like the skill that you wish you had learned before like getting the job you are at? Something
Yes,
that would have helped you, or like that like it would help you now?
Yes, so I wish I had been better in thermodynamics, which is most of my job currently. And yeah, let's see. Maybe I also wish I had known more of tools like artificial intelligence, which however are very new now, but because it's very new and it's taking ground also in the industries, we need to get up to speed at a very fast pace, and it's really hard to keep up. So I wish I had known something before and studying a bit of machine learning or data analysis.
I see.
So,
Thanks, Julia. And is there any question from the attendants? Please raise your hand or just speak if you want. Otherwise, we can move to Johnny. Okay, then Johnny, please, if you want to introduce yourself and talk about to us what you do, it would be great.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. That was a very great presentation and exhaustive, like you said. So you made my job very easy. I was going to say I didn't prepare a full presentation, but I did put together like 3 or 4 slides of just things I wanted to touch on. And also, excuse me, I'm recovering from a cold, so if I sound a little congested, I am, but I sound worse than I actually am, so it's okay. Can you see my screen, everybody?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, let me start sharing actual presentation. Okay, so I wanted just to also touch my background a little bit so people can kind of see the journey that I took and see if it relates to anybody else's journey. So I'm from Chicago originally, and I now reside in San Diego. I am a patent agent at Cooley LLP. And I'll go into the details of what a patent agent actually is, because I'm sure it's a little more niche and a lot of people really don't know what that actually means. So I'll go into that and kind of what the day-to-day is like. So like I said, I was from Chicago and I moved out to California to get a bachelor's in chemistry from UCLA. Um, I remember in particular not really knowing what I wanted to do when I was an undergrad. I knew I really liked chemistry. I had loved taking chemistry in high school, so I was majoring in it. And I never really was exposed to quantum mechanics until my undergrad, and I kind of actually really loved it. I fell in love with it and kind of wanted to dig deeper. So I ended up staying. I also loved California, so I stayed in California. I went to UC Irvine for my PhD. I got my PhD under the supervision of Kieran Burke. So my research really focused on developing density functional theory. In particular, my projects were more based on using cooler applications like machine learning in DFT, or expanding DFT to work at different regimes, like for instance, like non-zero temperatures, because most of the calculations you run in DFT are at zero temperature. But if you wanted to run something, for like maybe like you're looking at like a planet, like a planetary core where it's really hot, or you're looking at maybe like nuclear fusion where it's really hot, you have to run corrections, the temperature corrections. And I was working on developing those. And then I went essentially after I graduated with my PhD, that was in 2023, I went immediately into the workforce as a patent agent. So like I said, I work at Cooley LLP, so I'm going to maybe just dive into like what a patent agent actually is. So this is like some Google definition. So apparently a patent agent is a legal professional licensed to prepare, file, and prosecute patent applications on behalf of clients. I can attest that that's correct. So really what you do as a patent agent is you really work closely with inventors or different companies and the inventors at those companies to protect intellectual property. So that can look like preparing patent applications. It could also look like you just counseling people, for instance, because a lot of things that people develop are not necessarily geared towards patents. They might be better served as like a trade secret or something like that. So you counsel a lot of different situations, but mostly it's really developing patent applications and prosecuting them. And prosecuting is essentially just you going back and forth with the government in terms of like, we put together this patent application, we think it's patentable. The government comes back to you and says, hey, actually, we don't think it's patentable for, A, B, C reasons. And then you have to go back and forth and say, well, we think you're wrong because of X, Y, Z. And you go back and forth until you kind of agree whether or not what you have is patentable. That's called prosecution. So your main job is really just that, getting together the patent based on what the inventors have done, and then prosecuting that application. I noted here that the only qualification to be a patent agent is that you register with the USPTO, which is the US Patent and Trademark Office in the United States, or you can an equivalent for any patent and trademark office in any country that you want to work in. For the USPTO, the qualification though is that if you want to register, you have to pass what's called the patent bar or the patent bar exam. Which sounds a lot, I think, more intimidating than what it actually is. It's just to mimic, what the bar exam for lawyers is like, but really, the patent bar is actually really a lot less intense. For instance, I think it's only like one day, but the actual bar is like 3 days. So don't get too scared if you think it's going to be like a big test. It's only one day and it's all multiple choice. But once you pass that test, you can register with the USPTO as a patent agent, and then you can start work essentially. I listed here, yeah, so patent agents, they have technical background, so they have degrees. I've listed the most common ones here. So I always see degrees in biology, chemistry, physics, engineering, and computer science. I didn't mention, but to actually sit for the exam, this patent bar exam, you have to have, I believe, a bachelor's in one STEM field. They have like a whole list of like actual majors that are actually allowed and what degrees you need. But I think the main criteria is that you have a STEM degree. So yeah, that's why you see so many people with STEM degrees in the field, because you need it. And yeah, like I said, you work closely with inventors. So a lot of it is essentially being on like the cutting edge of what's actually happening. A lot of times inventors come to you and they have just run, a few tests and they're really excited and they don't know exactly where their project is going. So again, my background is in chemistry, so I work a lot more with like pharmaceuticals, for instance. So people are like, we have a really great lead, but we don't know exactly like where it's going to end up. But this is like the general idea, and you get to actually really be a part of the main innovation in terms of like, now we have to fine tune it and figure out exactly how this works and optimize it and all of that really fun stuff. So that's really exciting to work on the cutting edge of stuff. And then here I put just like the first page of a patent if people wanted to see. It can be really cool. And there is a lot of need for not only chemists, but also physics majors as well. I was going to say I see a ton of physics and engineering degrees and people that are have left academia or left industry to work in the field as well. So I can give my perspective, but if you're interested, I could get you in touch with more people who have like maybe more a physics background if people are interested in that. I also wanted to share kind of like a day in the life, not to give like a cop-out answer, but it actually really does vary. I would say that, you know, in terms of what I actually do each day, I have kind of separated it into like 4 different like categories of tasks that you could be asked to do as a patent agent. And I think I tried to lay it out chronologically in terms of like, let's say you're given like a brand new client with a brand new invention, what would you actually want to do in this order? So the first thing you'd want to do is like search. So you'd want to do a search for what we call prior art. So prior art is essentially just all of the patents, all of the publications, the conference talks, anything related to whatever the invention is. So searching is particularly interesting. I actually get asked to do it quite a lot because I have a coding background. Essentially, when you search patent databases, a lot of it is still command line and actually uses a lot of like, yeah, it's pretty interesting. You use a lot of command line tools, a lot of command line prompts to actually search them. So a lot of the people who are like in pure science degrees are really scared to do that. So I have to actually do it a lot. So if you have a coding background, you can find a lot of work in just searching. There are actually even firms that only do patent searching because essentially what you want to do is just get a complete landscape of, let's say I'll give again like a chemistry example. We have a new molecule. We want to know, you know, we have this molecule. It's really great. It treats, you know, we'll say it treats diabetes. And we have like this competitor who has this molecule. It's different, but ours is better because of X, Y, Z. So you want to do a search really to understand not only what the competitor is doing, but also kind of like what the whole landscape is to see if there's anyone else doing what you're doing. Because if there is, you really can't get a patent on it. So searching is super important. And if you have a coding background, you could really do a lot there. Yeah, so once you have that landscape, the next kind of steps of what you want to do is like an analysis. So you'd want to look through, like I kind of mentioned, and see what the general landscape is, because you know, one of the requirements for getting a patent is that whatever you're doing is new, it's novel, it's not going to be repeated from something else. You have to actually read through a lot of papers, read through a lot of just conference abstracts, a lot of different patents to actually see if does this patent actually talk about what we're doing? Are there differences that are meaningful? That's another thing is like if you, for instance, see something in a patent that's really similar to yours, but it's not exactly yours, you might still not be able to get a patent if it's like very what we call obvious. You have to actually make that difference actually scientifically distinct and something that would be non-obvious to someone in the field. So you'd actually spend a lot of time just reading through stuff, analyzing kind of the differences between what you have and what the other people had do, and then trying to provide counsel based on that. Once you do that and you kind of figure out, okay, so maybe a patent is the best move now, instead of, you know, maybe instead of keeping it as like a trade secret, you want to actually protect it. And then you get into like the drafting stuff, or maybe you want to actually draft a patent application. Most of the time, though, drafting patent applications isn't too much of the job. It actually is kind of the fast part. The longer part is responding to what we call office actions. Essentially what that is just the government, like I mentioned earlier, going back and forth with you, saying like, okay, the government is like, we don't think it's patentable because whatever reason, and you have to actually give reasons and make arguments as to why you think it is. So it's really just going back and forth with them. So responding to like those actions or those just documents from the government takes up, I would say, the majority of the time and the majority of the work involved in prosecuting an application. And then I would say also just as like a common thread is also just like communicating a lot. So another part of the job is just talking, like I said, to the inventors and the clients to not only get like what the latest updates are and what the invention is, the new experiments they're working on, the new data, but also with like the government, the US Patent and Trademark Office. Sometimes you have to actually have like, I had like an interview last week with an examiner where we actually just talked about what they were trying to say in their office action, where they said they were, for instance, saying it was, you know, we didn't think it was going to be or they said essentially, we don't think this is patentable because of X reason. And I wanted to clarify. So a lot of times you also have to just meet with them and talk about like why is X reason the thing you're on, kind of why are you sticking on that? So a lot of communicating between not just you and your client, but also just like the actual government itself. I think this is like the last slide I have, but just like general tips and suggestions for like anyone who would be interested in a career in the legal field. I would say the best thing for you to do, and probably one of the most important and crucial things you could do, is probably just look for local opportunities at your university that you're at currently. I was really lucky when I was in grad school at UC Irvine. There were a lot of really great opportunities for me to take advantage of, and I list a few of them like here. So I know, unfortunately, I was in grad school during COVID, so there was actually kind of more difficult to access a lot of these. But I know a lot of universities have like tech transfer groups where they're responsible for protecting like the IP, the intellectual property of the university, and a lot of times they have like programs for students that are interested, or they have like internships. UC Irvine had one, but again, that was the one that was kind of shaky because of COVID, so I didn't actually get to do it. But I know a lot of people who end up doing that when they're in grad school, and they really loved it. They said the internship was really wonderful. So I would look for your tech transfer group or a tech development group, one of those, and they essentially would be able to maybe have a program that is geared towards you. Or you can even just ask if you could come in and shadow someone. That always would be really wonderful. Another thing is that I did quite a lot was I sent a lot of messages to alumni that I knew were working as so you can just go on LinkedIn. I looked at basically UCLA and UC Irvine alumni, my schools, that were just looking for people that were patent agents or patent attorneys. One thing I would say about this field is that because it is such a, I would say, jarring shift between working in academia, working in science, and doing it yourself to working in the legal field. That's quite a jump, right? The people I think that now work in that field have all made that jump, and they're all really willing to talk to you and let you know kind of like how it works and the details, and like just give you tips and stuff that they wish they had known when they were kind of in your shoes. So I think everyone has kind of made that jump together in this field. So I think we're all willing to really just reach out and help people that are going through the same thing. So I would say if you can look up any alumni or any people from your school that are patent agents, then I found a lot of success in doing that as well personally. Another great thing is that you can audit law courses. I don't know if every school does this, but again, mine at UC Irvine, one really great opportunity I had was that I believe grad students can take up to like, I think 2 law courses for free. So I just audited a patent law course, and I kind of got my interest in it that way. I wasn't actually sure if I wanted to go into it, but I think it was my second year, like 2019, 2020-ish, I was able just to audit a course, and I really liked it. So I kind of knew from then on that I was kind of like wanted to pursue it. So that's a really great opportunity if you're small for something like that. And also just like general career seminars. That's actually kind of like this essentially. I kind of heard about the opportunity to be a patent agent at something like this when I was an undergrad. There was actually, I think, a course that was like mandatory for chemistry majors where they had people come in and talk about what they did with their degree, because the job market in academia is so cutthroat, and there is so I think it's like, what's the stat they would always tell us? I think it's like 3% of chemistry PhDs end up being professors in academia, and 97% of you have to find something else to do, is what they would always say. So if you aren't really sure, if you're just interested, just attend more of these and be able to actually get exposed to different stuff, because there's a lot out there that you wouldn't think of necessarily, on first thought. And I also wanted to like just also stress that like your technical background when you work in a law like field is like a strength. Essentially, they're looking for people in particular with really specified degrees. Not necessarily that you're going to be working in that field. That, for instance, I worked on DFT development right in grad school. I don't work with anything with DFT anymore, but they want to be able to say that they are hiring someone who is able to understand really complex material in that field in general, right? So I work with chemistry and physics stuff mostly here, so I'm able to my work doesn't say necessarily that I can do DFT stuff only. It says I can do complex chemistry and physics and understand it and be able to defend it in front of the government and stuff like that. But I wanted just to stress that when you interview at places, that's like a whole new conversation for like legal interviews. But I was going to say the main takeaway is that like you should really rely on your technical background as a strength, and you shouldn't shy away from it. Because a lot of people are kind of shy about it when they want to transfer, but really, it really is like the main thing they really want to see from you. So really lean into that if you're going to be applying. And yeah, I'd love to talk more if you guys are interested. I think that's all the slides I actually had. But yeah.
Thank you, Johnny. That was actually very cool. And now I thought like such a job would be possible. And like, again, if someone from the audience has a question, feel free to raise your hand to ask. But to start, I have some, Alan.
Yeah, I have a, Johnny, thank you for that presentation. And I also found it really interesting. I wanted to ask you about the bar test. And is the test that you do, say, as somebody with a chemistry degree, is that specific to chemistry or same bar test for everybody?
Same bar test for everybody. So yeah, it's just I think it's like 100 question multiple choice exam, and it's really just on like the rules of interacting with the government. Like I mentioned in prosecution, we go back and forth, and it's like it just asks you essentially if you know a lot of the finer details of like when you're allowed to talk to people. There's a lot of rules of when you're allowed to communicate with the government, when you aren't, and all of that stuff. So it's really asking everyone the same questions in terms of that. So every person in physics will take the same as chem, same as bio, same as anything.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, then I'll continue with my question. Oh, Emmy too.
Yes.
Sure, please.
Hi, Johnny and Julia. Thank you very much for very interesting talks. So I have a question for Johnny about going into this field with a PhD versus with the bachelor's. How do you think your job differs or your duties are different because you have a PhD?
Absolutely. So that is a whole, I think, conversation in and of itself. I would say, so it also really depends on the field. So I know for chemistry, a PhD is basically mandatory. There's no one working with a bachelor's, essentially, at least not in big law, with a bachelor's in chemistry. Physics and engineering, however, I think is a lot more, I think what's the word? I think the more like they call it like harder sciences, right? Like the physics and engineerings, they are able to get with like bachelors. And essentially, I don't think really the duties of your job would change based on if you have a PhD or bachelor's or master's, but what would change would be kind of the opportunities available and where you'd be able to work. So if you were working in like big law, then you'd want to have like a higher degree of PhD. But if you're working, for instance, in like a smaller law firm or a boutique, or if you wanted to work, like I mentioned, like some firms just do like searching, like a search firm, then you might be able to go with like a bachelor's. But yeah, if you want to work at like the top places, then yeah, probably a higher degree is mandatory. But I wouldn't say like your duties would change really too much. It would be just more kind of where you could work.
All right, thank you. Oh, and how about jobs at the PTO?
Oh yeah, that's I was just laughing because it's a complete. I mean, everyone knows it's a complete mess right now. I know there's a hiring freeze, so I wouldn't count on that coming off anytime soon. But I do hear that if you end up really liking patent law, but if you don't necessarily want to kind of represent people, because it is like honestly, it is like a lot of stress. It's a lot of, a lot of times people will send you something on a Friday and you have to get it done that day. So it's like you'll work until it's done essentially. There's like no opportunity to just say, we'll pass it till Monday a lot of times. So if people don't like that, so people end up going a lot from big law to the PTO previously, before everything. So I know people do end up actually liking it. It's a lot more like calmer, a lot less like stressful. But yeah, with everything happening, I don't know exactly when they wouldn't. I know there is a hiring freeze. I don't know exactly when they intend to lift it. But yeah, so I hear it is actually a nice way to still work in the field, at least in the past years.
All right, thank you.
I have one last question for you, Johnny. But before I ask the question, I wanna tell to the audience that we have a small poll, and if you would take a moment to like kind of fill it up, would be great. Basically, help us understand how we kind of can plan better the next session for you all, and so what are the things that you really care about that we can address. So it should be sent it in the chat. So oh, I think I don't know how this works, but like Alan, oh, Amy, do you see by any chance the poll somewhere?
Yes, yes, it popped
Okay.
up.
It's on
That is fantastic. And while this goes on, I will I have another question for Johnny, which once again is the same for Julia. It's like, is there any particular skill to start that you would prefer to have learned before you landed the job, or like something that would have helped you while you were pursuing the job?
Well, I would say, like I've mentioned, your technical expertise is really probably your main selling point. But one thing when you're interviewing that people really look for in the legal field is if whether or not you are a good communicator, both in written communication and also just orally and talking. So that's kind of one thing I kind of wish I maybe had developed more in grad school. If there were like writing classes, I actually think there were writing classes, and I actually didn't go to them because I'm me. But if you have the opportunity, I'd work on maybe developing more of your writing skills, more of your presentation skills and stuff like that, because that's going to be really useful. Let me think, anything else that's useful in the legal field? I think just maybe attention to detail, but I think as scientists, you kind of work on that over time. So, but yeah, I think attention to detail and then communication is probably the main things we're looking for besides just your technical expertise.
And like one last question, which I think you partially already answered, is like, is there anything particular that motivated you to pursue like this type of job rather than pursuing academia? Or in this case, I think also industry.
Yeah, I mean, I just personally, I really loved reading papers. I loved learning about research. I loved hearing about different things people were working on, but I really hated doing the work myself. I mean, I liked it for the first like few like months or maybe years, but then over time I was like, just read, everyone here knows what research is like, right? Where it's just like you try a million things and nothing works, and then one thing works, and it's like, I don't know, the part where you get to try a million things really got to me after a while. And I was just like, I got kind of over it. So I mean, I think just going into my PhD, I kind of knew I didn't want to go into like a research focused job, but I was looking more into like other things. And there's a bunch of things you could look into. You could look into like, I was thinking, besides just like legal stuff, but also kind of like working for the government, working for different roles in industry. You can be science communication or science communicators as opposed to just working in research. There's a bunch of things you could look into as opposed to just doing research. So I already knew I wasn't going to be geared towards that part already. Maybe it's just something in industry where it's not necessarily research based, but I think what pushed me really towards it was one, I took, like I mentioned, yeah, those two things. One was I took a career seminar and I actually learned about kind of what a patent agent was. And then I had like piqued my interest and I took a patent law course when I was in grad school and I really liked the material. So I ended up really kind of having a concrete foundation for being in the field.
Thanks. That's actually very insightful. So I have no more questions, so there is time for some more questions from the audience if someone else. If not, I think we can. Oh, a question. The chat. Okay, I'm reading it. So like, the question is, thanks for sharing. I'm wondering how to reframe unrelated research experience to position it as an advantage for a job in a company. I don't know if it's clear what I asked.
I could say from the legal
Like, it's
perspective,
also this question is probably both for Johnny and Julia. If you both would like to answer, you're more than welcome to.
yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was gonna say just from like the legal perspective on that, like the legal field, I would say there's no unrelated research experience that's irrelevant, because what they want to actually see is that you're able to pick up different things, right? Like I mentioned, I'm not doing DFT stuff every day. That was my PhD, but I haven't seen DFT in 2 years at this point. I'm picking up stuff that's different, and they want to be able to see that you're able to work on different things and able to handle complex things in different fields. Not different fields, different things, right? You're not going to be pigeonholed into one thing only, because that's not really what your job is. Essentially, you're working on stuff that isn't, your main focus. So I would say there's no irrelevant research experience. I would say definitely list it for sure and talk about it and use it as highlighted even.
I completely agree with you. It's the same also in my case. Like, yeah, I mostly do research job, but the work I have done in research, has been so far completely useless in a sense for my projects. But at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is that you can read papers, you can set up a plan, on how to conduct your research, and you are able to ask for help to the right people at the right time. And at the end of the day, you are able to deliver some results, no matter what the topic is. So diversity, ability to move across different fields is actually a very useful skill to have.
It's like, I want to expand on the question because, like, for instance, most job can ask, you need to have some work experience already, or like they want you to work. And so in that case, like, do you think that, for instance, if you did a postdoc or like you're doing a PhD, that kind of time would have been considered like as working time or not?
It's up to you to prove that it was working time in a sense. I mean, I would say that you can very often, like very, how can I say, boldly go out and say, yeah, I have work experience. I have 3 years of PhD or 4 years. I don't know how many years, depends on the country. And yes, like it's up to you to present your PhD as work experience and to make it clear whether you have conducted your research independently or not, if you have taken initiatives in doing something, whether it is organizing a seminar or writing grants or organizing an event. So it's or conducting your own research again. So it's really up to you.
I was going to say absolutely. I was going to agree that that I was going to say really just you should really, like, I think to echo what you said earlier, so that you should really just apply for anything you're really interested in, even if it's not necessarily like you don't think you fit the particular criteria, because like you said, you can argue that your PhD is work experience. I know a lot of patent agent like listings will say like, okay, they want people with like 3+ years of work experience in the field, in industry or in academia, but prior. Not really academia, just in industry is what they'll say. But you could go to the interview and argue that like, okay, what I worked on is relevant experience and I can bring that to the table. And a lot of times that is successful. I was going to say also that I wanted to mention that I think the job I have working at Cooley, there was actually no listing for a patent agent opening. I had just essentially talked with people, like I think it was a chain of people I had met from one of my alumni friends of our patent agents. It was like maybe like a third or fourth connection down the line, and they were like, "Oh, you would have been great to work on this team. Let me just see if they have anyone, or if they're interested." And there was no listing, but I got the job essentially just because they were going to list something eventually, but they just didn't have time yet. So I would say just one, try and talk to people as you can, and two, don't be afraid if it's like 3 years of experience and you have like one, or you have like none, but you think you might be able to argue because it's relevant experience. Then like, yeah, still just go. Don't lie, but like be honest with them, but just also be like, this is what I'm saying, this is like my position, and it's your job really just to sell it.
Thanks. So I guess at this point, if there are no more questions, we can end the session here. I really want to thank you both Julia and Johnny, for coming today. It was very insightful, and also thanks for everyone to showing up to the event. So like in this case, we'll see each other next time, and so I wish the best to everyone. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.